Let's see. Sam is fixing the sound. Oh, I've got jazzy music. Okay. Let's see. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. Liana, can you talk?
Yes.
Yay! Nice job, Sam. I'm really proud of you. Hooray! Well, thank you both so much for joining us in our little queer comic shop in Baltimore. We are so excited to have you join us for our Chillers and Thrillers Horror Club so we can talk about your masterpiece, Know Your Station. Yay!
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we are so thrilled to get to talk to you.
Yeah, well, we would love to start out, if it's okay, learning a little bit more about you both. If you could just take a moment and tell us a little bit more about sort of who you are and your journey into comics.
Sure, Liana, do you want to start?
Hello, everyone. I'm Liana Kangas. I'm a full-time illustrator in comics. I've written a couple times, but essentially visual storytelling is my one and true love. And I started comics, I think, freelancing around 2017. I left my old day job and I ended up becoming a comic shop manager briefly. And I discovered that I was drawing a lot on the job, and I switched to drawing comics and started with anthology work, and then eventually landed my first series with Black Mask, and then it went from there to a series with Vault, and then a lot of IP work like Archie and Star Wars, and a lot of Star Trek and Stranger Things, and it's just kind of from there. And then I met Gailey when old Star Wars editor connected us both for this project, and it's totally changed my life. So
Liana left out that they are easily the best artist working today and the king of comics, and better than anyone because they always stay humble. But I will not be humble on Liana's behalf. I started out writing in prose. I still do, writing, more traditional novels and short stories. And after my first novella, River of Teeth, came out, an editor who's then working at Boom got into contact with me and asked if I had any interest in writing comics. And I said, I love comics, but I don't think I'm nearly smart enough to write comics. And he gave me some encouragement and ended up convincing me to try my hand writing comics by writing an IP for Steven Universe. And of course, I mean, as soon as he said Steven Universe, I said, I'll do anything to write this. Had an absolute blast. And while I was working on Steven Universe and kind of getting to know a lot of the norms in the form, I also ended up pitching my first original comic series, creator-owned, Eat the Rich, which is with Boom. And Know Your Station is very much the follow-up to Eat the Rich. I was fortunate enough, as Liana mentioned, to get match made with the greatest star in the biz. And we created Know Your Station together.
Yeah, that is amazing. Thank you. Can you both speak a little bit more to how that project sort of came to be, how we got to hold this book in our hands?
Yeah, so Know Your Station is obviously pretty directly inspired by a lot of current events. It takes place on a space station populated by the ultra-rich, which has been a solution to climate collapse and global inequality, proposed by very, very wealthy people over and over again who have no understanding of what it actually takes to live in space. I knew that I wanted to write about this subject, and that I wanted to bring in the sensibility of a noir thriller, and then there were none murder mystery, and worked with Liana to develop these characters and this plot so directly. I sort of laid some groundwork with a pitch, and then as Liana and I started working together, we started talking about what would serve the art best and what the art frankly needed from the plot, because there were times where the plot was not necessarily doing justice to the incredible art Liana was creating. And especially the last issue, we really made happen together through a lot of conversation about what the best, most satisfying solution for this mystery would be.
I totally agree. When we were paired together, I always remember because it was around my birthday, I was offered the pitch from our editor, and I was like, this is the best birthday gift I could have ever gotten. Who wouldn't want to do a horror murder mystery in space? This is great. It was exactly what I was waiting for in my career and like wanting to work in the horror genre. And I had been doing a lot of sci-fi at the time, but didn't quite hit that area where it was like the sweet spot. It's like my favorite subcross genre. And getting to collaborate with Gailey and like end up, you know, speaking with them often, I feel like made me a better collaborator, not only on this book, but in general. And they taught me a lot about their side of the process. And I think they often brag about how I have done that for them as well, which is really fun because we both learned a lot together. And I think this is one of the first series that, you know, that I've worked on and, you know, completed that I feel so incredibly proud of the product, but also I've gotten and received so much feedback from it that feels really validating, you know? Because, like, I'm always proud of my work, don't get me wrong. But this series specifically, I think maybe because of the things that Gailey is trying to say, I feel like, you know, things are very important in this, and it was nice to be a part of the vessel of delivery.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Liana and I got a chance to chat a little bit at New York Comic Con, but we love getting to brag about. This is our most, when it was in periodical form, it's our second most subscribed series ever after Saga. We've had more subscribers on Know Your Station than anything other than Saga ever.
That's incredible! Oh my god!
It really does speak to, and that's what we, you know, a lot of folks were like, that, like, if you're under 60, this book is for you. Like, just read it. Like, you're gonna identify. You'll know. You get it. Yeah. So
Every time I remember our discussion, I like get a little weepy and tear up a little.
Yeah, it was. It's rare that we get to tell people in person how much their books mean to us as both like readers and lovers of comics and as shop owners. So that was exciting for us too. So and now we get to see you in person and both together, and it's wonderful. And we just as a group spent 10 minutes before you were able to join us talking about how much we loved it. So that's also nice too.
Well, thank you so much. That's like it means so much to me that you are putting this book into people's hands. Also, just the work of independently owned comic and bookstores is so vital, both to supporting readers and supporting authors, and also to battling the rising tide of fascism and censorship. And so every time I get a chance to connect with anyone who's involved in that work, I'm just like, you're my hero. Thank you so much for doing what you do. And also thank you for giving me the best news I've gotten today. That's so freaking rad.
Yeah, we love it. We actually sort of internally as staff have been having some fun conversations lately and interesting dialogue about what like a comic entry point sort of looks like for folks in 2023. Like maybe, you know, for your dad or whomever else, like that Superman off the shelf made a lot of sense, but now it's books like this. Like this speaks to people in a real way where this is a lot of people's entry point into the medium of sequential art, and it gets them hooked, and it wants to, you know, what else has, you know, has Sarah done, what else has Liana done, what other amazing stories are there? I want more dystopian, I want to see more billionaires get their due, like whatever it is that they want. So yeah, thank you for that. It's amazing and exciting, and we love getting this book into people's hands and helping them get back to our shop, so it's awesome. I would love to ask, you're talking a little bit about sort of the amazing cross-section between, horror and sci-fi. This book also has, I think for a lot of folks, a surprising amount of humor in it, especially at the end. Did you always know that you wanted the twist to also be, like, hilarious?
Oh gosh. I mean, for me as a writer, humor in general is so vital to my enjoyment of the writing process, and especially as I got to know Liana, as we were working on this, I was like, this person is so cool. I want this person to be my friend forever. And the only way that I know how to make friends is by making people laugh. So I started putting jokes into the script with the goal of making Liana laugh. That was my big goal, was to get a DM with a screenshot of that part of the text. And so I feel like the books get funnier as they go because Liana's extremely funny, and I was like trying to meet that level. But in terms of the actual final twist and reveal, that was something that we came to toward the end. Originally, I had like a placeholder ending, and I remember telling our editor, I'm not thrilled with this ending, but books reveal themselves to you as you write them, especially mysteries. You could start out with a mystery thinking that you know what the finish is going to be, and the characters will be like, it's not that. And so I was like, I'll leave this kind of loose until we get a couple of issues in and we've established some more character voice, and I've gotten a feel for who's who and who is most nefarious. And when we got toward this last issue, it was just so, it was so obvious. And I think it's obvious to readers who the killer is right from the start. And so we decided to work with the motive as the surprise, and incredibly fortuitously, as we were inking this, as we were inking, or maybe even as we were in colors, the conversation around, we've all read this, right? Are we worried about spoilers? Okay. The conversation around AI art was ramping up so much as, it was written and it was in process, and we were getting ready to put the issue out, and the conversation started ramping up, and I was like, ooh, either people are going to really love this or I'm going to have a bad inbox for a couple weeks.
I feel like lucky for us, though, like that conversation has been like kind of since the start of NFTs had been kind of slowly increasing. And so with AI generative art, I was like, we'll be fine. I was like, I think most comics folks that read this will be like, yeah, that's a terrible idea,
Yeah.
And so I was like that, or, I was like, it's okay. I've had a lot of folks not agree with my work. It's not going to be the first time, and that's totally fine.
But I remember we had this conversation where I was like, Liana, can you give me an artist's perspective on something? And you were like, okay, because I ask this all the time, and it's usually like, is it hard to draw a skateboard? But I was like, can I get an artist's perspective? Does the fact that Saint Bridget is clearly my favorite character in this comic seem to endorse AI art? And I remember Liana saying something to the effect of, well, you do endorse murdering people, so maybe that's not the biggest concern.
I was like, have you read your books? Just saying. Yeah, that was, I think the process for that specific last issue was really fun. There were a lot of things, even on top of the AI discussion, that were so intensely ingrained because you and I were both really kind of devastated that that was going to be the last issue that we worked on together for this particular series and these characters. And two, we're like, how do we top every murder in each issue? And how does the last issue top all four of them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was really interesting to kind of, and I think at that point we had talked almost every day, trying to make sure that this was, we were both on the same page, and we made our editor happy, and that, it was a strong product. And I think it really, us working so closely together, I think really made it as strong as it is.
I could not agree more. I remember these like very long Discord calls where we would be just looking at one or two panels and talking about each little detail. And I remember every time I got off one of those Discord calls going, but now that page is done. And like, I didn't want us to stop the work that we were doing together, especially because I could feel issue by issue you making me a better writer. With every issue that we worked on together, I could feel you causing me to grow in my understanding of the medium. And I was like, dang, what am I going to do with that's over? I just pitched a series today, and I'm like excited about it, but I'm also kind of dreading it because I'm like, no one's going to be able to top this working experience.
Don't worry, everyone. We talk all the time, so it's great. Like, it's nice to have a collaborator that sticks with you, like even after a project finishes. So
on that end, did you guys mean to wear the same shirt?
yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I just noticed that.
I'm so glad you noticed. I was like, do you think anyone will think that's weird?
Listen, that's just how it is.
This is our best friend shirt.
That's amazing. Nice. We're adult best friends with romantic shirts. So just
Yeah.
Oh man.
So there's some planning.
The man behind the camera.
Well, you certainly alluded to this a little bit already, but you were talking about characters sort of revealing themselves as the story went along, and I would love to know if there was a character whose maybe voice was loudest or clearest while you were writing, or one that was the most fun for you to conceptualize and draw, Liana.
I mean, in terms of voice, easily St. Bridget. St. Bridget is by far the clearest voice and is kind of a combination of the way that I think, along with my very dear friend Jen, who is the person who has taught me most how to be self-assured and self-confident. I have a tendency to question myself a lot, and then Jen will say something like, no one gets to test you without your permission. And I'm like, okay. And that's a lot in St. Bridget. St. Bridget's voice, loud and clear from jump. And the way that Liana drew St. Bridget is like incredible. I mean, far beyond my wildest imaginings and so perfect.
I wish I was at my studio so I could have the pitch document here with me. But when I was doing character designs, St. Bridget was supposed to just be Helix, not like a humanoid persona projected. And I was like, well, if it's going to be like a robot, like I'm a big fan of 2001: A Space Odyssey and everything. I was like, I don't want the AI to be not a physical presence of like humanity. And so Gailey automatically was like, yes, do whatever, like totally trusted me, which was great. And so did the Boom team. And I like fall along the lines of like the realm of, I used to play Halo when it came out, the first game. And so I was like, Cortana was like a big inspiration for St. Bridget and just a lot of the sci-fi movies, horror movies that I watch in general. Like, I think especially for the billionaires to have someone to where they feel like they're being taken care of, it makes more sense if it's like in a hospitality sense. So like you would almost envision that like you have a person waiting on you hand and foot. And then also to answer the first question, Elise is by far the easiest for me to draw, mostly just because she's a messy bitch. And I so fully relate to her in a lot of ways. When the more issues that I got in my inbox and the more like Gailey and I talked about her, the more I was like, oh, I feel like it is not good that I relate to her so well. And she just like, she's just so exhausted and like tired all the time. And really, it came at a time, 2022, where like I was like, that's how we're all feeling, and it was really easy to channel that. So great.
Yeah, I remember when we were talking about the design for St. Bridget, the reason that I had initially said no human body for St. Bridget, and I don't remember if I shared this with you at the time, was because I was working on an IP that I will not name, and I had gotten, when you work with IP, you're not picking your artists most of the time. And so an artist had come on for the IP who was drawing all of these very young characters in a very hypersexualized way that was challenging to push back on, because it's hard to find a way to diplomatically say, hey, how come you're making these teens look so sexy? That's not quite the vibe. And so when I was writing St. Bridget, that was very fresh in my mind. And I was like, I'm not looking to write a sex bot. I don't want this to be an easily sexualized character. I don't want to be going into, I respect the narrative route of AI and sexual exploitation. I think it's very valid and important to discuss. But I was like, that's not what I'm trying to do here. And I was quite stressed at the idea. I was like, I want there to be some sexy moments in this comic, but I don't want this character to be sexually exploitable, even in the minds of the reader, too easily. And I remember the first time we were talking about this character design, and you mentioned, like, I think that we should have a human face and body. I obliquely brought up this concern of like, oh, I want to make sure that it's a character that's, respected physically by the narrative. And you were like, don't worry about it. Of course, I've got it. And I just immediately trusted that Liana would know how to handle this and handle it well, and could not possibly have felt more secure in the knowledge that this character was going to be treated with respect by this incredible artist.
I vaguely remember most of this discussion, which is why St. Bridget's entire body is mostly only present around her best friends, meaning Elise and Marin. Otherwise, it's just her head up, because she doesn't trust anyone. Or at least that's how I read her,
I know that she's like a cold-blooded murderer, but I know that I wrote it, so I have no business getting emotional about this, but she has best friends.
She does. And
I also feel like I only have a body around my best friend.
Yeah. And they do
What a
art
mood.
projects together because they're best friends. And I love that.
Exactly.
Arts and crafts night.
Do other folks have questions?
You'd actually mentioned it earlier about how you kind of wove in noir, which I love as a genre. But I was wondering if there was anything from noir that like helped inspire that aspect of the story. If there's anything you were thinking about when you were writing this or drawing it.
Oh yeah. So I mean, Elise is your very classic disastrous PI figure. Not all that interested in solving crime for the sake of like crime is bad, but more invested in personal gain and profit motive, struggling with substance abuse, right? If you think about the amount of whiskey that is consumed by private investigators in classic noir, Elise is right there, always trying to investigate with a hangover. That's my favorite. And Marin is a femme fatale. Marin is a hot, suddenly showing up, kind of suspicious, but big emotional support to our detective character. And those two are really the core of the noir beats in this story, along with a noir theme that's very important to me, which is all these people are terrible. When a noir detective is trying to solve a mystery, everyone involved in the mystery they're trying to solve has deep, dark, horrible goop inside of them. And that could not be more true of anyone than of the cast of characters of The First Resort.
I think Marin being called a femme fatale is my new favorite.
Yeah.
This entire idea of this entire book.
I mean, the way you drew Marin, it leaps off the page. There's this one panel where Marin is like leaning back against a wall, arms crossed, and I took a screenshot and I messaged Liana and I was like, you didn't have to do this. Like, come on.
So great.
Other questions for the team?
When you guys were like deciding how to murder people, was it more art inspired or was it more writing inspired? Like which one kind of came through? Because they're just highly graphic and it's just awesome. But how was that decided upon?
I would argue that it was written really, really, really well for me to take incredible cues off of, but I think I'll let Gailey knock this one out.
Oh, you're not slick. That was so sneaky. No, I mean, I wrote these murders. The murders in this book are deeply inspired by NBC's Hannibal, which is a show that stages murder scenes as art, and that takes each shot of a kill scene as something to be aesthetically appreciated. So every kill that I wrote with the art very much at the forefront of my mind. It was less how realistic is this murder or how, like, what would motivate this type of murder, and more what would look sick as shit. And then handed that off to Liana, and Liana was off to the races. I mean, there were so many of these kill scenes that had like multiple angles drawn for us to look at and choose from, and the angles would emphasize different graphic and incredibly upsetting parts of the kills. There were a couple of kills where I was like, this would look really cool, and Liana would be like, here's the sketch, but I don't think that it's coming across. And so we would like tweak things, and especially that final page, that last splash panel, the splash page, was a total collaboration between the two of us. I remember us getting on a video call and workshopping in real time what is the most unsettling, violent thing we could be doing to human bodies on this page. And especially the placement of the corpses in the big dollhouse was a process of Liana and I in complete unison building that scene.
That was so much fun. And I have to say, when you wrote Amanda's murder, I said, oh, I cannot wait to draw that, which sounds really messed up, but I really do think that that's my favorite one, only because it's so subtle and you can't really tell until you kind of look at the details, and then you're like, oh, you know?
I believe the phrase that we used in the script was a spiral sliced honey baked ham.
Yes. That is not a lie. They actually wrote that out word for word.
Was that your favorite murder scene to draw, or did you have another one that you really enjoyed noodling through?
I really loved the fake Bridget murder scene, because like doing that angle of like them opening the elevator with a crawling. First, I thought of the Leonardo DiCaprio like crawling on Quaaludes, and I was like, how can I make her look so devastatingly helpless? And like I was like, well, you know, maybe she's like crushed and like there's pixels like laid out or whatever, and that's what happens when her mainframe is up or whatever. But I think, I mean, almost every murder was fun, and honestly, I'm really kind of worried about my internet search history. I really hope that these people put two and two together with the book. But I think the only one that I wasn't like, oh, this is so much fun, was drawing 8,000 mini vials of glue. That I do think was like,
I'm so sorry.
No, it's, I mean, work smarter, not harder. I should have learned how to make a Photoshop brush and made it super fast. But I did those all by hand, and it was really fun. But I do think, oh nope, you know what? It's Pritchard in the vacuum seal bag. That's what it is. Yes.
So I have a follow-up question. Oh, sorry, you were gonna say something?
Oh, I was just going to tell Liana, I'm so sorry, but don't blame me for all those vials, because when I was calculating how many vials it would take to get all the blood out of a human body. I went on Twitter back when that was a place where you could find information, and I just asked my followers. I had a big fat Twitter account, and so I would just say stuff like, "How many vials would it take to empty the human body of all blood?" And a bunch of doctors came in and were like, "Here's how many." Same thing happened for the first kill scene that you get where the skin is removed. I got to have a very nice online conversation with a nice young man named Hank Green about how long the human body can last with all its skin removed, and it's longer than you think. What was the follow-up question that someone had?
You kind of led into it with the Twitter. Did you envision any of these actual real-world billionaires in these murders?
Is the question? The question is, would I be interested in seeing any of this happen to any real-life figures who happen to have amassed huge amounts of money by exploiting human workers and completely ignoring the value of human life and dignity?
Yeah.
Officer, I couldn't possibly say.
I have a question for Liana. I think we've talked about how for the genre, right, humor was so important to be included with this sort of sci-fi noir murder mystery. But I also want to talk about the colors. Easily, this could have been a gritty, shadows and bisexual lighting only from the background colors. But it's so bright. The station is bright. The color choices seem agreeable considering what's really going on in this murder house. What was your thought on that, on the palette and all of that?
That's a really good question. So Rebecca Nalty, our colorist, was so amazing to work with, first and foremost. I've worked with her on not only this book, but Mariko Between Worlds and She Said Destroy, and I think probably even another book. I've lost track at this point. So we had our first planning call, the same call that we talked about, Bridget having a humanoid presence and all these other things. I brought up the concept of the colors because I was really interested who they would end up picking. They hadn't landed on a colorist yet, and I get really nervous about colorists coloring my work because I don't tend to close lines off. I feel bad for flatters, which is why I exclusively work with one flatter who I used to be old roommates with him in college. He gets my art. And so the biggest discussion we had, and it was the most collaborative, was the fact that a lot of the billionaires are going to be wearing very different things than any of the employees on the ship, including also what the ship looks like. There's going to be no money spent on the ship, just basic bare bones. It's going to, where the lower decks are, right? Where all the employees stay. And then where all the billionaires are going to be as lavish and intensely invested and as too much as it needs to be. There were even some pages and scenes or some of the penthouse apartments for some of these billionaires that I didn't go hard enough on. My editor was like, you need to make this more ridiculous and more absolutely over the top because they have an unlimited amount of money and they're not going to leave their home and go up into space without, making it, try to top every other billionaire, right? And I think that's really a word that kind of that Gailey has sort of used. And so the main color choices were picked based off of class and money. A lot of the character designs and the colors based for the billionaires were kind of inspired by Silicon Valley, but also rich texture colors for pigments that are expensive. And then the workers' uniforms, which were all very much, you can tell with different body types, that there were a couple different versions made, but essentially everyone has the same uniform. And it's kind of like a unisex sort of coverall situation. And the reason I'm not incredibly sure why we originally were going to do almost like a holographic thing for the technology corporation, but I think we had discussed it would either be too much time spent coloring and doing this really elaborate shading on these uniforms. And so what we ended up doing was just kind of choosing like a branding style and then just going with one color, which is basically that very off-tone grayish purple, which is like, it's a lot more saturated in the book because the entire book is very saturated, which is awesome. But if you're looking at it in the lens of like taking the neon away, it's a gray jumper, right? Like, and what do you think of when you think of like gray jumpers? It's povertous, very basic kind of. My brain is not working right now. Sorry, it's 6 o'clock.
I think what we had discussed when you first showed me that was that it was like an intersection between janitorial staff and a prison uniform, which is exactly what the situation on the space station is for these workers. It's like a job, but also a jail. They cannot leave. And we had discussed, God, Liana brought this up when we were first talking about this uniform design that I thought was so genius, which is like the very wealthy people on this ship are never going to want to look at anything that they find aesthetically displeasing. I've experienced this when I've been working in a support role in a place that very wealthy people are. They don't want to look at anything ugly, but they need the people serving them to be at least a little degraded by every part of the job. And that includes the uniform. That is why like mall kiosk employee uniforms are made of ill-fitting polyester. It's because you're not supposed to look comfortable and happy. You're supposed to look like you are in a position of being forced to degrade yourself in order to serve somebody else who's pleased by that. And Liana brought that up and was like, jumpsuit. It's got to be a jumpsuit that doesn't quite fit right. And we talked about, kind of having on the ship an underground sort of cottage industry of like people altering each other's uniforms to make them fit a little bit better and maybe have a little bit of personalization. But it can't be anything that would flag the billionaires on the ship as you being too much of a human being. And that's where some of these very individuated designs came from. It's like different designs for different body types, yes, but also Liana introduced the idea of alterations to be like, okay, there's a little of my personality in what I'm wearing, because humans do that all the time. Think about a school uniform. Kids with school uniforms always find ways to fit within the uniform code, but identify themselves as individuals. I think that's also where Elisa's sleeves came in. She wears these sleeves on her arm, and one of them has her St. Bridget interface, but the other one is just because she likes it. And I love that you included that in this design, that you think of these characters as people more than their employers do.
That was a really good question.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Sam, do you want me to ask your question? Yes. Okay. The man behind the curtain wants to know more about Blue. What is it? How did it come to be? Is it just meth? Is his follow-up?
Oh, I'm so excited. No one has asked me about Blue yet. Okay, so Blue is a hallucinogen that is made by the major pharmaceuticals corporation owned by one of the billionaires on the First Resort. And he pioneered this hallucinogen that you can give to workers to make them relax when they're off work. And this is actually like a conversation that happens a lot in labor organization communities. The role that drugs and alcohol play in the efforts of the ruling class to oppress the workers. I personally think drugs and alcohol are super fun, and I like them a lot. But in certain contexts, drugs and alcohol can be used to both destabilize communities and to prevent people from feeling that they have the ability to pursue better conditions for themselves. And it's very cyclical, right? You work really hard all day, your body and brain are tired. You get off work and you go to your local pub for a pint and you hang out with your friends and you're all kind of drinking to try and come down from the day. But alcohol at a certain point both inflames and depresses the nervous system. You lose both your ability to regulate your emotions in a way that allows you to think forward, and you lose your ability to hope for bigger, better things in a brighter future for your entire community, because your nervous system is both inflamed and depressed. And eventually you get wasted and you go home, you crash, you fall asleep, you wake up, you kind of feel like shit, and then you drink your coffee, you go to work again. This cycle prevents people from being able to connect with each other meaningfully to organize for better working conditions. And this isn't conjecture. This is something that people who have controlled the means of production have talked about quite extensively in public records many times. When they get off work, give them an ale. It makes people feel as if they're more comfortable in their conditions while also keeping them oppressed by their conditions. And blue serves that exact purpose, which is why St. Brigid distributes it, because St. Brigid is just like the HR guy at your job. St. Brigid works for the company. St. Brigid has been programmed to represent and serve the needs of the company. So St. Brigid says, hey, you're looking really tired after that day's work. Do you want to take a hallucinogen that will actually kind of isolate you from all of your other coworkers and keep you in your suite or in your sleeping pod, having these like vivid and reassuring hallucinations that connect you to things that you're missing, which is part of why Elise's sobriety journey is so important to her ability to eventually connect with her peers. She's alienated her peers by, being kind of controlled by this substance abuse problem that she has. She's addicted to blue, and it changes her behavior. It makes her inappropriate at times with her peers. It keeps her in her suite a lot, away from them. And when they do interact, it can be a little weird because she's not all cognitively there. And once she starts sobering up, she starts connecting with people again, and she realizes, oh, these people don't hate me the way I've convinced myself they do. I don't have to avoid them. I can hang out with them and get wasted at a party with them, and we can connect with each other instead of staying disconnected in our horrible working conditions and thinking that we're isolated in our suffering. So that's blue. That's I know I just went off for a million years. No one's ever asked me about this, and I'm very passionate about it.
That's great. Nice. Good question, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah. Any lingering questions for Gailey or Rona? Okay. Well, we talked. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Do you have any untold stories with these characters that would be like?
Liana, what did we leave out? I know there were a couple things that we had to cut.
I know. So you had touched base on Marin's backstory, and I think it's a lot more complicated than just the flashback of them in a war. And I also think we had discussed, some of these billionaires, how did they get to these industries that they worked at? And how insanely miserable is there? It's the succession of I want to know how terrible all their lives are, internally, right? And
we actually, for the billionaires, we even wrote, as we were promoting this series on social media, when the trade was coming out, Liana and I wrote up character dossiers, and Liana did art for them. You can find them on both of our social media. I think they're all on my Instagram. Just going into the full background of how these people got to be where they are, including their family relationships and their chief crimes against humanity.
Their likes and dislikes were my favorite part. It's truly if you want to know a little bit more about each character, it is quite the time. It was so fun. And I had a really fun time going back, and the amount of work that Gailey put into these dossiers made it easier for me to go back and really enjoy and read it again, I think, as the trade was coming out. Because, we read it for lettering passes, and we read it to make sure, all the pages are good before print and everything. But it was really, really fun to be oh, I forgot that I put this tiny little thing in the back of this panel. Even one panel from 2 pages, there's something almost completely covered up, which is a dead body. It's in the first 2 pages, and you don't even notice it. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that I put that there. And then like just keep on moving, you know, like, and there's just so many other things that we as a team could have put in these stories, but you know, as with sequential and monthly comics, it's very hard to put as much love and detail in these things to meet deadlines. And so I think even the first kill room that's detected, you know, we have all these really funny Easter eggs that Gailey sent an entire list, and that was, by the way, the first time where I was like, this is probably one of the funniest people I've ever met, just based off of this alone. And I just recently only just now asked, like probably 2 weeks ago, saying, hey, did you put that Peloton in there to make fun of me? Or and then I realized, oh yeah, no, we were only just starting to talk back then, so you did not know I had a Peloton. But now I've just self-roasted myself. So pretty great. So I think there were a lot of things, even based off of some of the Easter eggs that you said, that you could expand on in a lot of ways. And I hope that we get the chance to do something in this realm again.
Oh God, I hope so too. We would have so much fun. We would be insufferable.
I honestly, insufferable, but everyone loves it. So I think it's great for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like we should email Philip and make sure he knows that we, need it.
Let him know.
I love that you're on our team. I'm so ready for this.
Well, you both have, it's not an easy answer, and Liana chatted about it a little bit already, but I would love to know what each of you is most proud of from this project.
I'm proudest of having gotten to work with Liana. I know this is like a corny answer, but when I think about this book, I think about so many things, and I'm so delighted to have gotten to create it. But more than anything, I'm proud to have gotten to collaborate with someone who is so profoundly skilled and insightful about the industry and brilliant on a human level. I mean, this collaboration has been the highlight of my writing career, easily.
This is not a cop-out. I'm going to also agree. But I would like to mention something that I really found extremely impactful, which is when we were doing the lettering pass, I think it was around C2E2 in February this past year, so like right before the trade went to print. And our editor asked you to do a forward, or asked us to do a forward, and you sent me the forward in the first version, and I remember reading it out loud around some people, and I started crying, and I realized what an impact you have on a lot of people, like with your work, but also in that, like, I got to be on this journey with you and do something so important. And even though it's just a book on a shelf, to me, it's a lot different. And it's really, you know, it's made us collaborators. It's, you know, put out one of the best books of my career. It's, you know, saying something really important in the lens of like my favorite, like things that I've always wanted to draw, like noir and like horror and like funny moments and dark comedy and like dystopic ideas and all these things. But then to read this thing that you wrote and like how impactful and powerful it sounded, and how it just totally crushed my little baby emotions reading it, and how you also put my name on there for some reason. I give you full credit. And just, it's really cool to, you know, worked on a book, and then also to have someone come up to me at New York Comic Con, know who I am, and then say, hey, we've sold a lot of these. Number one, the highlight of my New York Comic Con, and number two, you know, it just makes me remember why I keep drawing, and comics is very hard sometimes, but it's why I do what I do, because that just like, that refuels me till the next year to keep going and keep trying no matter what, you know.
Yeah, please don't stop. The work that you both are putting out is exceptional, and you having a fabulous comic or graphic novel, it is the marriage between the writing and the art is so important and can really make or break the experience for the reader. And clearly, the two pieces together just sing in this book, and then getting to speak to you both now, it's so clear why. And it's amazing, and I hope you get to do more projects together, because clearly it's meant to happen.
It's working.
It's working. Yeah, it needs to happen. It's a winning formula. So I'm excited to. I mean, on that note, I'd love to ask you both what upcoming projects you have, and then we hope there are more collaborative ones in the future.
Yeah. So I am spoiled in that I am only continuing to work with Scott and Gailey right now. So I'm doing a lot of fun IP work with Archie and some other things that aren't announced yet. But in terms of creator-owned projects, my eyes are targeted on Scott and Gailey. So they can't get rid of me. I don't know. They signed up for this, so.
Yeah, the conversations that Liana and I have been having about future collaboration are so exciting to me, and we can't say shit about it yet. I currently have on shelves right now is the first issue of my first solo Marvel run with White Widow. I'm getting to write the incredible Yelena Belova, having the time of my life with her. And that's going to be a 4-issue mini right now with potential to go series, although I think it's probably going to be a 4-issue mini. We've got some amazing variants, including a variant that Liana just showed me today that I hadn't even seen before. So, you're in the right place if you want to pick that up. She's a master thief, an assassin, and spy, which is all my favorite things for a woman to be.
That's awesome. Have either of you been reading any comics or graphic novels lately that you've been loving?
Oh, I want to go first on this. I read this amazing comic series. It's out in trade now. It's called True Cult, and it's written by Scott Bryan Wilson, drawn by Liana Kangas, and it's gorgeous and so funny. And I mean, it's a book about satanic burger franchises. So, like, what more do you want?
It looks like this.
Very fun.
Yes! Yes.
I know. I literally 10 minutes before we started realized I wasn't wearing the shirt that I got from Liana at New York Comic Con and was so sad. I have a comic that says I have a shirt that says "Read Comics, Stand Satan" that I got from Liana, and I forgot to wear it. And I'm so sad.
Thank you for picking that up. Anyone that's at this book club right now that wants a shirt, I will specifically make an exception to ship them to the shop so you could pick it up. So please let me know, and I will email my Venmo information and we could figure that out. But it is by far probably one of my most I'm the most proud of this piece of merch that I've designed. And it surely is paying off, I love that everyone loves it as much as I do. So and the stuff I'm reading right now, White Widow, as you just saw, I picked it up, and Kill More through IDW, which is also Scott's book, and The Deviant through Image Comics, and Josh Hickson, a buddy of mine. They make an incredible team. And also Josh coloring his own work is by far, you're just not going to get better than that. He truly is just so talented. And honestly, I'm like, that must take you so long. Oh my God. Stunning. And, I just picked up the Aquaman Andromeda, Christian Ward from V. I cannot wait to read that. I waited because I was like, I can't do single issues for that one. I did that with Cliff Chang's. I'm gonna learn my lesson. Waited too long. Oh, I can't do the monthly in between like waiting anymore. I used to be very patient, but now I'm like, no.
That's awesome. You do not have to because this is not a job interview, but do you have any questions for us?
Ooh. Does anyone have a favorite character?
I really liked Elise a lot. And of course, St. Bridget. I mean, there were moments we were talking about before we got on with you where it would go from, like, I like horror, but I don't always love gore, but this was done in, like, a very palatable way for the most part. It's disturbing, but, like, really good. And the scene where Elise is talking to St. Bridget, like, I'm blinking on his name, is this guy alive? And St. Bridget's like, absolutely. And then walk in, like, lungs out, everything out. And then he's like, oh, not anymore. It's just like the whiplash of, like, grotesque to absolutely. I don't normally laugh out loud, but I was, like, cackling in bed while I was reading this before I went to sleep. It was just so good. So, like, I really like the interplay between a lot of characters, especially, the main three characters with Elise, Marin, and St. Bridget. But definitely Elise and St. Bridget really were exceptional. So good. So good.
The way that Gailey has written some lines between Elise and St. Bridget has made me full body like convulse, like laugh, and then me trying to text them being like, this is the funniest shit I've ever read. How am I going to draw this as funny as I just read this, So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I would love to know if anyone has a favorite splash page or panel.
You.
Yeah.
Prior to joining, we talked about the page when St. Bridget was like, but I'm an artist.
Yeah. I'm an
Yes!
artist. So good.
That was all Liana.
This one.
Yeah.
So good.
Because I was like, it also like with the like the one meme in the corner, like
Yes, those comments.
it's definitely part of like the whole AI like learning art kind of thing. So it really.
Did you all pick up on every single meme in that one? There's the kid coloring meme. There's the butterfly meme. The is this whatever meme. There's the kid crying because he like finished the art with the newscast interview lady.
Yep.
Oh.
And he like wipes his.
Are you okay? Yes.
Yeah. And then the dolphin I am artiste painter. Which is why when Gailey wrote that, I have an inside joke with one of my best friends, and she always sends the dolphin gift to me 24/7 because she's like, whatever, you're gonna knock it out of the park, it's fine, you're an artist. And so she'll always send that. And so when I was trying to visualize this page, I was like, okay, I know that we agreed on like a Sailor Moon vibe, but I was like, there needs to be so much in this that makes no sense, but all the sense in one fitting. And so I was like, she's so proud of herself for doing this that like I kind of thought of like a young cheerleader, and like my nieces are very like into sports and stuff right now, and so I just feel like Bridget would like just be really excited about it and like pose. And so the whole like mix between Gailey and I talking about like Sailor Moon and transformations and like all this stuff, and I was like, oh, Rebecca's gonna hate me for this page. But we all did a great job. I think
We all
I'm
did
glad
great.
we got that one out. Yeah.
Turn that into a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I would love that.
I will
Yeah.
ask Boom immediately. Like,
Yeah.
I think honestly, I can't pick a favorite splash or panel because Liana, we talked about it earlier. You just do such a really good job of capturing natural moments between the characters that it just all feels very realistic, and the movement that you can capture in your line work is just phenomenal. And I love just looking at it, just opening up a page and just looking at everything.
that means so much to me. I'm gonna cry on the book club.
We allow a lot of crying in book club. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
That's the most
Yeah.
crying at the book club.
Yep.
You should check out the cover of the Liana did for the new comic from Vault Beyond Real. It
Yeah.
is gorgeous.
We yes, we'll show it around. But yeah, we got a little sneaky peek at your cover for Beyond Real, for Vault, which is gorgeous. Vault sent it or gave it to us at New York Comic Con. Because I think I was like wearing your shirt and carrying around stuff from you, and the guy from Vault's like, "Oh, are you a Liana fan?" and like pulled it out from under the table, and I was like, "I'm like a full-time Liana fangirl walking around New York Comic Con."
Street team.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's it. I will happily be a full one-woman street team. But yeah, we are very excited for that comic, and your cover is gorgeous, and yeah.
I cannot wait to share the interiors. Please email me so I remember to send them to you.
Deal.
The interiors. Oh, that's the other thing I have coming out. Sorry. Issue 5 of Beyond Real. I am on it with Jorge Corona. Zach Kaplan's writing it. It's incredible. It's getting to see the art from this series all the way up to, I'm only on issue 5. So it's like, I get a treat. All of my reference material is from like 5 or 6 other artists. So I guess I'm like, that's what it feels like probably to go back and read tons and tons of like Spider-Man comics or whatever for like reference for when you write. Like, for me, it's just this indie series and it's the most stunning thing I've ever seen.
It's beautiful.
So good.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I have one final question. It might be a little personal. Are those rabbit piggy banks behind you?
Those are Smorkins.
They're Smorkins, yeah. That's not personal. That's why they're on display. Please ask me.
That was so nervous.
I have spent so much time and money making this. So these are vinyl toys designed and made by Kid Robot, specifically Frank Kozik, R.I.P. He used to have and own and made a record label, which was one of my favorite record labels. And he also used to do show poster design. So I'm like really big in music. I'm a drummer, and I'm a really big Frank Kozik fan from when he did show posters in the Tara McPherson era, you know, mostly 90s. And when I will give you the personal side of it. When I quit smoking cigarettes, I didn't really do anything to like celebrate, you know, the years passing. And during the pandemic, I was like, I'm going to do something to support myself and to like treat myself for not going back to anything like that. It's been over 10 years now. And I remembered that when I went to record stores, those were very expensive. I think they were like $60. And I was like, oh, I can't afford that. I'll never get those. But during the pandemic, I was like, well, people are just selling these on eBay, and I never thought to get them. And so for every year that I quit smoking, I purchased one of these. And I've never told anyone that except my friends. So,
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
That's
awesome.
It's not easy to quit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice that we could talk about, you know, that kind of stuff, especially in this book and everything. And, you know, we all have our vices, but, you know, with cancer and all that stuff that runs in my family specifically, I was like, oh, I need to quit like immediately. So I'm like, I deserve to have a nice thing to represent that, you know?
That's perfect.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. I designed this space specifically to produce people asking me about it. So
Nailed it.
Happy to oblige.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having us. This has been such a pleasure. Honestly, really the highlight of what has for me been a very complicated personal month. This was such a balm and a little island of joy, and I'm so happy to have gotten to talk to you all.
Yeah, thank you both so much for making the time and for joining us. We even, when it's a book like this where everyone comes to the table having already fallen in love with it, the appreciation that we get just becomes that much more rich after we get to talk to you and hear all of the thought and care and time and dedication and heart that you put into the characters and the story. And it just makes us love it that much more. So thank you both so much for sharing your time tonight and in making this book and in helping us fall in love with it again.
Your support on the book is insurmountable, and we can't thank you enough. And it was so great to meet everyone. And thank you for taking your time to, ask us thoughtful questions and spend time with us because, this is great. This has been such a fun time, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everybody.
Nice to see everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.